All right. Hi, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you who are here at the live session of our very first webinar in a series. It's my pleasure to have you online, have you join for our first webinar on AI. And this particular edition is AI for trade associations. And it's my pleasure to have here my colleague, friend, partner in crime, Jacques Full. Jacques, you want to say hi?
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you for joining the session. This is really exciting for both of us, so I hope you are ready to take notes and to listen to what we have to say.
Very good. And we have a lot to say, and we want to say that in 45 minutes. That means a bit faster pace than what we normally would do, and something that may be not immediately everything obvious to follow, but we're going to share the slides afterwards, or at least most of the slides, and the recording will also be available. So if anything you want to go back to, you're more than welcome. And we are very happy to follow up with you bilaterally, email us, reach out to us on LinkedIn or other platforms. So with that, I think we can immediately get started. A very quick technical check. Hopefully the audio, video works smoothly. You can hear us, see us well. To be sure that you're familiar with the chat interface, so please type into the chat box, where are you joining us from at the live session? So type in the chat box, where are you dialing in from? This way you'll be familiar with the interface, whether you're on mobile or other devices. So far, lots of Brussels, and some Geneva, Luxembourg, London. And so far, Jacques, you are winning because you are in the US. So you're the furthest away from HQ Brussels, Stockholm, and sound is good, all very well. So appreciate you being here, and in respect of everyone's time, and since the topic, there's a lot to say about it, we're going to get started. But before that, a brief introduction, and Jacques, you might want to say a few words about your background.
Sure. So my name is Jacques Full. I'm a digital communication consultant. I've been working in the Brussels bubble for many, many years in agencies, mostly developing creative campaigns. And I've been partnering with Andras for a couple months now. This is really a topic I'm really passionate about. So hopefully you get a lot of value out of this session today, and you can implement some of the tools and tips that we're using in this presentation.
Excellent. My background, I've done many different projects and still involved in various initiatives. Some of it you might know my work from, which is EU training and the Ultimate EU Testbook, which is for EPSO and EU exam, EU career preparation. And another bit is I used to work with an organization that was helping to train public affairs professionals, also from a perspective of strategic communications. And the strategic communications is where my true passion is. And when ChatGPT and AI came along, it really was a central point that really made me realize how interesting it is to use that for this particular area, for this particular use case, which is EU affairs, advocacy, and public affairs. So I changed an organization I used to run, a training company, and then turned that into Influence Builders. And I'd say the rest is history, but that history is pretty brief because, as Jacques said, we've been working together for a couple of months now, but that work has been very intense. And the fruits of that work, of that labor, are what you see partly today.
Yeah, so just in a couple months, we have trained over 100 people in public affairs and communications. So I think Andras has more of a public affairs hat. I have more of a communication hat, which is really interesting in this space. We have also created custom AI workshops. So that's for organizations that need to go a little bit step further when it comes to AI applications. So the wait list is open. We have also launched a monthly Substack newsletter. So just to stay updated with the latest news in AI, and more specifically, how we can use AI in public affairs. And then we're also just publishing weekly AI tips and tricks on LinkedIn. So if a lot of you might have seen our stuff on LinkedIn. So this is how we sort of share the latest things that we find interesting in the AI space.
I think we are so enthusiastic and so much in the discovery phase of all of this that it's not weekly AI tips, it's almost daily AI tips. But indeed, whenever we come across some gems and insights, we tend to share that. And of course, a lot of ideas and insights come from feedback and conversations, partly from the workshops that we have been running, and partly from reading extensively about the latest technology. But most importantly, GPT is a wonderful thing, and many of you have certainly experimented with it, and many of you may have done crazy stuff like the one we put up here as a teaser, as a warm-up, that GPT can explain to grandma what an EU trade association lobbyist does, and in a way that resonates with her, and she loves cooking, and then do that answer in a short poem in the style of Eminem. And then GPT actually cracks that riddle and is able to do such a thing, and is able to do that pretty well. Now, in trade associations and European or international trade associations, this kind of prompt doesn't get you very far, right? It might be helpful and funny and cute, but it doesn't take you further to helping your daily work and making you a more effective advocacy or public affairs professional. So a few words, we have this series. You may have seen that we do various editions in the coming days. So this one is focusing on trade associations. Tomorrow we'll talk about applications for NGOs, so the nonprofit and civil society sector. Then we'll have a dedicated edition for EU officials, then communication professionals. On Friday, we address public affairs consultants, and next Monday, we'll be discussing and sharing use cases for members of European Parliament and their accredited parliamentary assistants. So you're welcome to follow these. There might be, of course, certain overlaps, but our aim is to always provide you with new information, new examples, new use cases. So if you join us for more than one, hopefully you will still get some insights and ideas out of that.
And when we think about AI for trade associations, there's a lot of things that can come to mind. But these are the things that we're not going to focus on today, because we already have 45 minutes to talk about these things. So we're not going to talk about the EU's AI Act or any policy issues related to AI. We're not going to go through AI ethics, although we think that it's a really important thing to talk about when it comes to transparency and data privacy and all these different topics. And we're also not going to talk about AI's impact on society and jobs, although these are really key questions to ask ourselves when we're using these tools. So there's a lot to cover today, but we're not going to go through these specific topics. We're going to go through very practical applications.
And maybe just to add one word on that. So given how important these topics are, and basically all of them are pretty close to our heart, though perhaps not the first one, because we are not looking at the policy aspects, but the ethics in the application of AI, in using AI in your daily work, and also the larger societal questions. We may organize roundtables or conversations around those topics in some shape or form, whether online or in Brussels. So stay tuned for those conversations to happen.
Exactly. And in terms of housekeeping, yes, the recording and a shorter version of the slides will be shared after the session. We also want to share the idea that we're tool agnostic, which means that we don't prefer a specific tool over another. This is just, we're going to share some tips and tricks on how to use many different tools. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat to ask these questions.
And we'll do our best to answer them to the degree it's possible within the time available. And if not, we'll do our best to find a way to follow up or answer those in some LinkedIn post or follow-up email or other. So no question is left unanswered. And to the point of tool agnostic, we love ChatGPT, but Gemini is also great, and Claude is also great, and there are many other tools that keep coming up. It's more about the techniques and the practical applicability of these, and not so much on which tool to favor over another. And the ambition really is to spark your curiosity, because more than anything else, we encourage you to experiment. We encourage you to come with a very open mind to say, oh my God, I didn't think that I could use it for this. even though it's entirely possible already today with very little or no technical expertise. And by that logic, encourage you to deliberately experiment. So not just randomly discover things, but to have a bit more awareness, a bit more deliberate way of looking at what you want to achieve, and then play around that. And ultimately to inspire ambitions for your own organization, for you personally, and to say, okay, let's have an internal conversation. What processes, what methods, what tools can we put in place already today that's going to help our work, both as an effective advocate, also as a workforce in your daily workflows and processes, and perhaps even on organization-wide level, because as an association, you have lots of members, you are present in all, perhaps even more than the 27 member states, and there are other countries and areas. So there is a lot that GPT and AI can give to you. So we first start with best practices when using AI. And some of you may know part of this stuff, others may be new to this, but it's important to make sure that everyone understands sort of core concepts and ideas.
So to get us started with this conversation, I think it's really important to ask ourselves, what challenges have you faced when using AI or ChatGPT in your work? So this is an interesting question for you. So type in the chat box your answer. So what challenges have you faced when using AI or ChatGPT in your work?
There is one: inaccurate answers, biases, which are probably the two most common things. Someone ever used AI or not yet? The hallucinations, too general answers, confidentiality risks, unnatural language. Yes. These are very, very common and recurring points and challenges with that. Okay, very good. So those are helpful, and we're going to address many of these in the next couple of minutes. So perhaps with the first one that Jacques, you want to take and share what you have in your own settings.
So in my own settings of ChatGPT, so if I simply go into the settings, I can customize ChatGPT, which means that I can give specific instructions for every time that I use ChatGPT. So if I want ChatGPT to be more professional, if I want it to be more sensitive to specific information, or if I wanted to protect myself from biases and things like that, then I can easily customize these instructions in the settings. So this is really key when it comes to the quality of your answers. If you want ChatGPT to act a certain way every time you prompt AI. So this is really key. You simply have to go into these settings and use the custom instructions to get better answers, basically. This is what we usually are challenged with, the poor answers, or just not human voice used in those answers. So you can do that in the custom instructions.
And to that point, that's again an evolving thing. But if you are concerned about unnatural language, then you can even instruct ChatGPT to change the tone and even feed it your own writing, so it understands your style, and then it can replicate that later. And these are horizontal instructions, like Jacques said, and this will help you in every single chat that you will have inside ChatGPT afterwards. Right.
Yeah, so another point is about data privacy, which is basically one of the key points that people want to focus on when they're using ChatGPT. So again, in the settings, you can go into the data controls, and you can ask ChatGPT not to train its models based on the content that you provide or the prompts that you share. So obviously, we would instruct you not to use personal information, personal data in your prompts. But another way to protect yourself is to simply go into the settings and switch on the improve the model for everyone if you do want ChatGPT to train its models with your content. But if not, you can simply switch it off and make sure that ChatGPT doesn't use your data, which is a really key aspect of prompting to take in consideration.
And also in some paid versions and the team version, there are extra layers of privacy. So even when you share there any kind of information, it's and again, I'm saying that with a tiny bit of caution, but it promises not to share it with anyone. So if it's a truly sensitive data, then probably you want to check it with legal and the IT to be sure. But again, the vast majority of the conversations that you will likely be having there will be protected in the sense that it's not going to be disclosed further than that constraint. And I see that there's a question whether this is available in the 3.5 version. As far as I know, yes. The difference is not so much which version of ChatGPT you use in terms of the engine, but rather whether it's a paid or the free version. But even the paid version is around $20 right now, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a pretty accessible fee, and that it has further tools and further settings that the free one might have. But even the free, as long as you're logged in, as long as you are signed in with an account, it should have those features. And let's start with the big question, or the first question that I often hear, not necessarily in this particular format, but that's the essence. Whether ChatGPT, is that a solution in search of a problem? And I saw from the corner of my eyes, there was one question to that effect, saying it's just not worth it. Not worth it, the balance between, oops, the slides were just jumping. So it's just not worth it, the effort you put into it and what you take out of it. And I would strongly challenge that view, because once you know what to use it for and how, you're going to discover its immense power. And then the equation between how much effort and time you put in, but what you take out of it is going to be absolutely worth it. Meaning you don't need to, you're not going to use it for something that you're much better off or quicker to do manually or immediately. It's simply going to pay off. It's a bit like, well, should I walk from Brussels to Paris, or should I take the train? Well, I could walk, sure, but by train, for most part, it's simply worth it because it's just more efficient way of doing things. And I wanted to share with you this thought experiment, which I did, I think it was yesterday, just experimenting to visualize an idea I had. And that idea is, at which level can you, or do you wish to use AI or ChatGPT? And on the very basic level is what we showed you at the beginning, that funny or not so funny, but intending to be funny prompt about grandma and the Eminem rhymes is fun and entertainment. So there's a lot you can do to that effect, but again, it's not necessarily that applicable in an EU policy trade association environment. The next one is probably much more practical when you do some simple task automation. These are typically things that you do right now, you can do and have been doing in a certain way, but it can be done quicker, easier, with less effort and less time. So this is the proofreading, the summarization of background documents that ChatGPT does really well. And again, with the caveat that if prompted well. And the third one is a more sophisticated way, is looking at workflows. So looking at workflows for you personally and for your association as an organization. So it's from data analysis or email drafting or analysis of different background documents. And the next one is the more advanced one, where it's more advanced problem solving. So brainstorming, cross-referencing different inputs and different background documents, open-ended questions, strategy questions, speech writing even. So things where the result really needs to be generated because it needs to be created from scratch. But what that's created from, what the background document and the inputs are, will require certain thinking and consideration. And then sort of the top level is really looking at specialized AI tools. These could be custom chatbots, which again, despite being on the top of the pyramid, they are not technically complicated to create at all. But it does require a certain understanding of how it is done. And apps, meaning custom built apps for your association, for a problem or a use case that you in particular have. And again, these are not technically extremely complicated issues. The right person can do these in a couple of hours, couple of days, usually not more than that. But again, it's understanding to use the engine for a certain purpose and to solve a certain problem.
And just to talk about custom GPTs, which is an important topic, because if you find yourself using the same prompt over and over again, you might be thinking, how can I speed up the process? So in ChatGPT, you can create your own GPT, which will understand sort of the prompt every time you share something new. So it's not necessarily something that will need to understand the environment or understand sort of the requirements you have, because it's something you can already set in the back end. So for example, if you're looking for an idea refiner, for example, if you're trying to brainstorm ideas and convert sort of disorganized ideas into very structured thought, then this is something you can do in a custom GPT. So this is really key, I think, for trade associations. If you have very specific needs, if you have specific applications you want to use ChatGPT for, and there's many ways to create these custom GPTs. We won't go through all the details, but this is just to give you an example of something you can do if you find yourself using prompts over and over again. And when it comes to then creating your own custom GPT, there's many different applications. So applications that are more internal for national members, or even external applications for more advocacy. And it can be from anything from, policy brief generator. It could be a policy update bot. So anything really that is more specific to your organization. And then the custom GPT can help you summarize EU legislative proposals. It can help you draft specific agendas, take notes. So all these things can be done through a custom GPT if you provide the right instructions. So again, different use cases that are more internal or more external to use these ChatGPT, these customized ChatGPT tools.
I wanted to just add one or two aspects which I think would be interesting and relevant for most of our listeners. One is that typically these are free, and beyond maybe that $20 subscription that you might need, but they are typically free because you need to create that once, and that might require a certain understanding, but typically it doesn't take a huge effort to configure. It's not even building it, it's rather configuring it, because you feed in certain background documents, your association's annual report, your association's main position papers or policy documents, and you instruct that custom GPT, and you can share that internally in your organization or with your members, and to say, okay, now you can ask me questions about certain positions that we hold, or what's our stance on policy X. And as long as the background documents are properly fed into it, and these are a couple of PDFs that you may have given it, it's going to answer you properly. So the information retrieval is no longer Control F or Command F and let me look for a keyword. This understands the meaning, not just the words, but the actual meaning between and behind the words. So that is a huge added value for the information retrieval, and there are stuff that you can do with that as a result. And in that vein, Google just came out with a pretty cool, it's an experimental, I don't know if we can label it as a knowledge hub or something along those lines. It's essentially, it's Gemini powered. So their own, say, ChatGPT engine powered system, which is available to any and every user of Google. And if you're not yet, you can create an account. And then you go to Notebook LM. What you can do there is feed in the kind of background documents, the PDFs or web pages and documents or any other into this, and it kind of creates a library that you can then ask any question from. So it can create an FAQ from that library. It can create, briefing documents. Let's say your director general or secretary general needs a briefing for a meeting that he or she has with a commission official, with a member of parliament, and to say, okay, we are a trade association in the digital space or in raw materials. No matter what, depending on what you feed into it, it can easily generate those briefings, and at the minimum briefing points that you can then refine, but it already gives you a pretty good basis that you may otherwise take long time to collate. And I wanted to show you one project that I'm working on with an organization, with a digital communications agency I'm involved with, which is called the Right Street. And this is an experimental project where we created a message tester, and message tester as in advocacy message tester. So we created virtual personas. We gave them a lot of attributes, psychological and demographic and political attributes to these imaginary but not so imaginary personas. And I can pick any number of these personas. Currently we have 10, but we're going to have more. Some are conservative, liberal, on the whole political spectrum. They are replicated, and I can throw messages at them and say, okay, how would you react to this? What would you say if you heard the following slogan, the following motto? And I can even upload a PDF and say, okay, tell me what you think about this particular policy paper or briefing. And then they give a response, which is Claire Dubois, who is the imaginary name of this particular persona, and then gives a first-person response and says, okay, here's how I see, based on my values, based on my political background, based on my worldview. So I just wanted to showcase this, that this is powered by an engine, a ChatGPT, but then we created a special system around it that is helpful for a communications, digital comms agency to test messages that can then be used for a campaign.
And here's the next question for you in the chat. So what challenge could AI help you solve? And this is a really key question because this is the starting point of you using these AI tools. So this question can help you sort of identify the needs you have and see how AI can help you solve these challenges. So if you have a minute, just what challenge could AI help you solve? Please answer in the chat. Thank you.
I can see you writing minutes, and that is soon going to be a thing of the past for most meetings and for most contexts. Summarize digital meetings. So there are wonderful tools increasingly in Zoom, in Google, in others. So afterwards, we can share you a list of a couple tools that we've come across for these note takers. Any other? All right, reach target audiences, data analysis, absolutely, summarizing reports. So a lot of this, Jacques, I think these can fairly easily be used, resolved with GPT, with the right configuration. Quickly analyzing regulatory texts, right?
Yes. So on our side, we sort of mapped out all the different uses specifically for trade associations. So this will hopefully inspire you to think about how you can use AI in your daily work. So the first one being tailoring services and messages to specific association members.
And just to give you an example, we've come up with some samples, some examples. Of course, it can be more detailed and more personalized for your specific use case. But say you're a policy officer at a leading trade association, so you give a role to the AI of who you are or what it should represent. Please review a commission article on securing more affordable energy in the EU, draft a concise summary, and then you provide a background link, so directly it can browse online and go there. Though typically downloading even a web page as a PDF and then feeding that into the ChatGPT tends to work much better the way it processes information. But that is something you can fairly easily do right off the bat.
Yeah, and if I were to add something, it's key here to think about all the input that you can provide. So it doesn't have to be necessarily just a document. It could be a screenshot. It could be a link to a specific website, as Andras said. The second use is preparing meetings, events, interviews with unique storytelling. And by unique storytelling, it means storytelling that is relevant to your members.
And I love this idea and the example that Jacques just gave, and we're going to show you an example in a second. But storytelling is something everyone talks about, but very few are willing or able to do it, because it's obviously not easy, because when it's still quotas and when it's a comitology document that you need to deal with, how the hell are you going to turn that into storytelling? And GPT is incredibly good at that. When you feed even a very technical information into it, it can turn that into relatable and memorable storytelling or messages. So one example is about PFAS, which anyone in the chemical or dealing with chemicals even remotely would be familiar with. It's these so-called permanent chemicals, or whatever the layman reference is, to the degree that's true. But in the chemical sector, it's a highly technical, complex topic and complex area. But then you can take that and say, okay, here I feed in this report from European Environmental Agency, and here's a report, and say, okay, provide a summary of the most relevant points for our European Trade Association. And already I'd left Forever Chemicals. Thank you, Jean-Yves. So the point here is, it's not just a summary that I'm asking, because many people would or have figured completely out by now. I feed in the document that say, give me a summary. You can take it 1 or 10 steps further and say, okay, give me a summary of how it is relevant for us as a building insulation sector trade association. So basically pull the information, but especially or focus on the aspects that are relevant for us. And to say, I'm a non-expert, so explain it accordingly, that's an additional layer where the way GPT is going to present you the information is going to be very different from you being a molecular biologist who presumably knows a lot of toxicology as well, right? So then the language, the terminology, and the way it's explained will be vastly different. Jacques. Oh yeah, one more. This one is just, I had to leave it there because I used to teach implementing and delegated acts, the procedure. So I said, okay, explain implementing acts using a plastic bottle as an analogy. Silly example, I know, but again, on a more serious note, is that you have this vastly Kafkaesque procedure of implementing and delegated acts, and say, okay, turn that into a relatable storytelling, to Jacques' earlier point, and explain that in a way that even my grandma will hopefully understand.
Very good examples here. And I think the next step is to think about optimizing internal work processes for better member support. And this is where trade associations usually spend a lot of time. So how do we organize the work better internally so we can provide better support for our members? And the first example we wanted to share is about AI automation. So there's many AI tools that you can use now to basically trigger different actions between tools. And for example, you can create something in Gmail or send an email, which would then trigger a ChatGPT to create a new prompt or to create a conversation. And then you can then route these conversations to either get another email. But basically, what's really important here is to think about all the automations that are possible based on the work processes that you already have as an association, but also to use ChatGPT not so much as just a tool that can answer, but a tool that can be used in a wider process. So for example, I send an email, then it triggers ChatGPT, that then triggers another ChatGPT that will sort of summarize or do something a little bit more in depth. And then whatever output then can be used in the rest of the sequence. So sending another email or updating a specific document. So this gives you a sense of what is possible in terms of automation. But I think the first step as an association is to think about your work process and how you can integrate ChatGPT in this process.
And to add one more idea to this is that the true power here is that, as opposed to your classic Outlook mailing rules, when say, oh, an email comes in and if it has the keyword, then it goes into this folder. This actually, so GPT is now able to understand the contents. And again, we're not limiting this to just an email, but to say there's an alert from the commission about a press release or about a funding opportunity or about any new legislative initiative or a communication. And you can put monitoring and alert on it and say, okay, if this is broadly about chemicals, to stick with our example, well, then alert me on my Teams channel or send me a text message or email our dedicated regulatory team about that. So you can do that qualitative analysis of the content and not just focusing on keywords or other formalistic attributes.
Yes, and since we already have a couple minutes to run, we're going to speed it up a little bit. So there's another use case that we can do is analyze large volumes of documents and data to provide high quality insights. And this is something that we saw in the chat. So really key to focus on like high quality volume of data.
I just see, to immediately address David's question, should you give GPT access to the content of your emails? It's not what we're saying. It's that you can direct a certain alert into a GPT-driven engine, for instance. So you can do that for website monitoring. I'm not saying that you should trust it to such degree that it has full access to your emails, though some people might do that. But again, that's not the main message here. It's about setting up a sequential workflow that can help you things which otherwise an assistant or someone else may have been doing before. So to give you an example on what Jacques just said, just a broad example, I put this very simple prompt in to say, compare the positions of the EPP and the ECR in the parliament on the EU's approach on pesticides. And certainly it relies on the generic or the broad data that it has access to, which is not necessarily fully up to date. Cutoff used to be around 2022, 23, but it still answered pretty well because based on certain trends, it could answer. But you can feed it an Excel sheet or you can feed it background document, and it's going to then be much more precise in its analysis. So if you have some trade data about your association and you want to draw certain conclusions from that, you say, okay, analyze this export table that's from the Eurostat. And what does it mean for our sector? It's very powerful in doing that detailed, complex analysis and pulling insights for you.
Yes, and the next point is personalizing content and marketing materials for specific members, which is also another way to use AI. And
as an example for that, you could say, here's, Jacques, I think you found this, was it a press release or so? So saying, okay, take this document and see, help us draft an email for our members. And you could even customize that. So customize if it's our German members or if our Bulgarian members or our Latin American partners, then here are some relevant points from the same source, but customizing it for different audiences very efficiently and very quickly. And then staying with marketing or staying with communication bits, you can say, okay, create a structure for a LinkedIn post about our latest members in Brussels and renewable energy, and then what to focus on, expand highlights on certain things. And if you feed certain background or contextual information, whether it's a website, a PDF, a report, a style guide, or other, it's going to give you far better results and much more relevant results, and not the usual blah, blah that you occasionally see that people have generated with GPT, but never bothered to fine-tune.
And the last point is to anticipate policy changes, trends, and arguments to make better decisions.
And that, as an idea, and it's one of my favorite, which I'm happy to share with all of you, which is have GPT play the devil's advocate. So to say, okay, we are an association in the raw material sector. Here's a position paper, dissect it, right? Like be critical and give us all the weak points and give us defensive points that we can actually counteract against those weak points, right? So it's going to be your worst high school English teacher and your worst critique in a good sense, because it's constructive criticism. It can also give you the right responses to it, provided you prompt it accordingly. And then a couple final points in respect of everyone's time, and I'll promise to you. So GPT often works by this Pareto rule, the 80-20 rule, where it takes you to 80% of your solution, and do not expect to give 100% proper, accurate, great solution immediately. That's the 20% that you add to it with your review, with your fine tuning. But it can take you as far and just have the expectations configured properly. And that's why we're emphasizing. And here's a silly example, but it's not without reason that I put it here, which is it. I asked how many letters does the word terrestrial have, and as you know, it has 3 R's. But first it gets it right. Then I make it uncertain. Said, "Are you sure?" Then it says it has 2, and I ask again, "Are you sure?" Again, it says 2, and then okay. Show me all 3, but what I didn't say all 3, show me all R's, then it realizes there are actually 3. Now, what did I just do is I asked for proof. I asked for references. And Jacques earlier spoke about hallucinations, or we will in a moment again. That's how you make sure that it's an extremely powerful engine, but it has to be properly instructed. It's like a wild animal that has to be tamed through your words. So here's the hallucination bit.
Yes, and when it comes to hallucination, there's many ways to improve your results. So better data in the prompt. So just making sure the input that you provide is high quality. You can also browse the web, so double check the information, or ask ChatGPT to look for the specific information directly on the web. There's also a knowledge base based on the data input. So thinking about going a little bit further in the data input to think about what exactly you're providing, and then request references, as I said earlier. So asking ChatGPT to look for specific references online, for example.
And not just references online, but you put a PDF, you feed a PDF in, you ask for a summary, and you can instruct it just simply with your words and say, provide a reference or tell me on which page and in which paragraph is that information located inside the PDF. Immediately, you eliminated 99% of the hallucinations because it's going to say it's on page 12, line 4, and you can look it up and check it for yourself. And to emphasize a couple of points, and then we'll, I think, just finish on time, though I see there are a couple of questions, which we may do 2 extra minutes just to answer those for those who want to stay on. Do not be afraid of using it, because there's this adage that says AI will not replace your job, but someone using AI will. So start experimenting, start looking at it from a professional development aspect. And do not use it as Google. It's not very great at retrieving information. There are other tools for that, like perplexity.ai and other tools. So GPT has other strengths, and Gemini and the others. And do not trust it fully. So trust but verify based on using some of the methods we've outlined. So generally, we say that GPT and AI tools are pretty eager to please you. And sometimes they overplease you by not listening enough or not waiting enough for the proper context. It's very smart because it's powerful, but it's ignorant because it works with large data sets. But you can give it your own data sets, your own limited focus, and then it's going to be far, far better than otherwise it would be. And the good prompt is always, it needs to be clear, it needs to be concise, and it needs to be effective. So you want to know first what you need to know.
Yes, and we often say that AI has revolutionized the way we think because we have simple access to high quality answers, but then now our focus is to ask better questions. And for example, when you're thinking about improving your prompting skills, and this is maybe something from one of the comments that we just received in the chat, you have to really think about, okay, we have a prompt, for example, give me ideas for a webinar for trade associations. So this is very meta. This is regarding this webinar at the moment. If you go a little bit further, and if you think of making your prompt clear, more detailed, with more elements, if you're basically instructing AI with more details, then that's how you get a better answer. The improved prompt is I'm running a short webinar, so you're providing more information. You're asking specific things, so give me 10 specific actionable, usable ideas, and then you're sort of breaking down the priorities for the specific prompt. So the more detailed you are and the more clear of a vision you have for what you need, that's how you get better prompts.
And just to Philip's point, yes, there are leading questions about the prompting, such as this one, but the general rule is you can make very detailed and relatively long prompts because the results will be then far better. So, and then there was a question about ChatGPT and Perplexity. So Perplexity is great to retrieve existing information, collating existing information, which is the best lawnmower that I can buy. Then it's going to collect all of those. But GPT generates new ideas, new information based on your question. So with that, I think we're right on time at 45. We appreciate your attention and your time. And just to let you know that we are available for workshops if your team or others around you are interested in taking it to the next level and going further, or to invite Jacques or myself for speaking engagement, and consultancy to the degree to optimize your processes and see how you can integrate that in your organization. So with that, we encourage you to come to our site, to Influence Builders. There you can sign up to our newsletter and also follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to us. Let us know if we can be helpful in any way. Feel free to share the recording with your colleagues and your team, and which we're going to send you shortly, perhaps in a few days, but we'll try to be faster. And we still need to automate that, right, Jacques? We need to drink our own medicine and do so. And maybe I'm looking at some questions may have been left unanswered, but we'll find a way to address those, perhaps in a LinkedIn post or in some other way. And a big thanks to Raquel, who was there in the background helping us from afar. And to everyone for being here, thank you. And this was edition number 1 for EU Trade Associations, how to use GPT and AI. And the next edition tomorrow is for NGOs. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Have a nice day.